It's early in the 2023 season still, but the New York Giants are facing a crossroads ahead of their Week 4 game against the Seattle Seahawks. Some thoughts about that and some changes that this team really needs to consider making moving forward if they're going to change their luck. That's coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Train, not P-Train, and happy to have you with us here on this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. And a special shout out to my everydayers, to my subtext members, of which I see the family is growing. So welcome to all the new subtexters, to my first timers, and everybody in between. You are appreciated. You're loved here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And look, things in Giants country right now, maybe not as good as we'd like them to be, but we're going to try and be upbeat a little bit. As on today's show, I'm going to give you some ideas that I have that maybe will help the New York Giants moving forward, because it's gut check time for this team. Let's call it for what it is. So we're going to talk about 4 ideas that I have, and then I'm going to wrap it up with some final thoughts, including giving you an update on what I know about the injured players. That's coming up a little later on in the program. So again, thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Let's get into it. All right. Okay. So gut check time, as I mentioned, for the New York Giants. They're coming off a 1-2 record. All right. Now, I think I've said before that the record itself, not unexpected. I think a lot of people, if you were mapping out the individual wins and losses for the games, probably would have had the Giants at 1-2 at this point. A loss to Dallas, a win against Arizona, and a loss to San Francisco. The problem, as I've mentioned before, though, is how they have been losing. All right. There have been times when they've just looked so out of sorts that they haven't even been a factor in the game. They haven't, scored. They've looked sloppy. And, a lot of people sit there and they say, well, in training camp, it was this, that, and the other thing. They didn't play their starters. Well, there are other teams around the league that didn't play their starters much in the preseason. I believe Kansas City might be one, if I'm not mistaken. And has that stopped them from playing well? And I'm sure there are others I'm not thinking of, but we could look at that for the Giants and say that's the excuse. It's something that I believe that the Giants should have struck a little bit better balance, because if the idea was to keep guys healthy, we all saw how Andrew Thomas got hurt, Azeez Ojulari got hurt. Saquon Barkley got hurt. So, you can't avoid injuries. They're just going to happen. It's a way of life in this game. But let's take a look then at some ideas and things that this Giants team needs to do if they want to make sure that they come out on top against the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football. Giants don't do well on primetime games, and Monday night, I don't think is very kind to them either. Matter of fact, I don't think they have a winning record on Monday night, Sunday night, Thursday night, or any nighttime game for that matter. So, but here's a few things that they need to do or consider doing, in my humble opinion. All right. Number 1, obviously, start the games faster. The Giants have been outscored 98-34 in 3 games played. And they've scored just 6 points in the first 30 minutes of a game. All right. How does that happen? This is an offense that is in year 2 of the same system. And they've only managed to score 6 points in the first 30 minutes of their 3 games combined. That's wild. That is a wild, wild stat. Now, there are many reasons for that. There are drive-killing penalties. Right, of their 9 penalties on offense, 5 resulted in drive killers. There's the inability to convert on third down. All right. 37.5% conversion rate on third down, which ties them for 19th in the league. The Giants are averaging 14.3 points per game, which is 30th in the league. That's worse than last year and the year before that, for that matter. So the Giants, how can they start faster? How can they sustain drives? How can they make the first half more exciting? Because let's face it, guys, it's been either frustrating or sleep inducing to watch this team in the first half of games. Well, obviously, cut down on the mistakes. That's number one. The drop passes, the misfired balls. I mean, the offensive line, obviously a big issue. We've talked about that a lot on this show. The offensive line has got to give Daniel Jones a chance. But that being said, folks, no quarterback is ever going to enjoy on every drop back a clean pocket. It just doesn't happen. All right. So Daniel Jones, to an extent, has to be able to better navigate if the pocket gets a little bit dirty. I'm not saying that, the offensive line is blameless. That is certainly not the case here. But there are going to be times when the pocket gets a little dirty. You're never going to have a pristine pocket. And I don't know if Daniel Jones is just conditioned at this point in his career to automatically take off or go into panic mode when the offensive line protection breaks down. But at some point, you've got to say to yourself, okay, when do you show that you can navigate through a slightly dirty pocket? All right. So, it's different if you've got 5 guys coming at you or 3 guys, that beat your blockers and you've got to run for your life. But if there's a slight pressure around you, if the pocket is collapsing a little bit, you've got to be able to step up and throw. And, the thing about Daniel Jones that I wonder about is his internal clock on point? We saw in past years where it wasn't on point because of the pressure, him either getting rid of a ball too fast or not getting rid of the ball in enough time. So I wonder how much, these first 3 games, the pressure has kind of gotten to him to affect that internal clock of his. Only Daniel knows, only the coaches know, but I can only go by what I see, and I think it has been affected, at least this season to start. All right, point number 2 that I want to make. The tackling issue. We all saw it. We all know about it. And Xavier McKinney, the safety, was asked about it. And I want to play for you what McKinney had to say about the tackling issue.
I mean, tackling, obviously we got to tackle, but that's not why that's not why we've lost 2 games. And so, obviously we got to be better with it, but that's not the reason to, that's not the reason to us having, lost 2 games, in my opinion. But obviously the fundamentals matter, and we got to be a lot better in that aspect, and which we will. But, it's not the reason, it's not the reason why the games are going how they're going. So it's a lot of other different things that we got to correct and be better with. But, and like I said, fundamentals always matter, and they're always going to matter, and we'll be better with it. But, I'm not going to stress too much over that because I know that we're a good tackling team. Obviously, we're just going through a little hiccup, but like I said, we'll correct it, and we'll keep moving forward, but not going to stress over it, though.
All right, everybody. Xavier McKinney, Giants safety, who is tied for 3rd on the team, according to Pro Football Focus, in missed tackles. Giants with 29 missed tackles, if I remember correctly. And, he's right to a degree. The missed tackles aren't the sole reason why this team has lost and looked the way it has, but it's a big part of it. So my suggestion here, if the Giants are listening, which I doubt they are because they don't listen to the media, why should they? But this suggestion is quite simple. You watch the Giants defenders and you wonder if perhaps they are going for the strip of the ball or to force a turnover. Because remember, the Giants defense doesn't have any turnovers yet. And sometimes when you go for a strip of the ball, your tackling technique goes out the window. So, as with anything, I get it. You want to be a turnover causing machine, but you got to start with the basics. All right. And if the fundamentals associated with tackling are getting away from you, which apparently they are with this Giants team, go back to the basics. Don't worry about forced fumbles and strip sacks and all that stuff. Wrap up. All right. Get that down pat, because obviously, we could talk about how, there's no tackling in the in the off season. The only chance to tackle is really in preseason games. And a lot of the starters didn't participate in that. Well, you know what, guys? 31 other NFL teams went through the same thing. Most of them did at any rate. And they don't have the number of missed tackles the Giants do. I just think maybe the Giant players are trying to do too much on defense, and it's compromising their ability to tackle. So go back to the basics, take care of the fundamentals, and then the other stuff will fall into place. All right, coming up next, I've got a couple more points that I want to make in this next segment, so please do not go anywhere. Hey, Giant fans, did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of thinning hair with Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physicians formulated natural science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. And it works. In a clinical study, 84% of the men who used it showed improvement in their hair after 6 months of taking Nutrafol. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz. Identify causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off their first month subscription and free shipping when they go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. That's Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, P-Train, and appreciate you tuning in as always. And some good news for you guys. Some of you have said, hey, Pat, you haven't been doing this in a couple weeks. What gives? The live stream, ladies and gentlemen, with Tana and Dog is coming back this week. We're trying to figure out the day. It's not going to be Wednesday. It may be either Thursday or Friday. I got to check in with Tana and see what works for him. But we do intend to bring the live stream back. And boy, we sure have a lot to talk about, the three of us. So I'll post the details. Those of you who watch us on YouTube, you can find it in the YouTube community tab. And if you want to tune in and join us, as always, feel free. Because like I said, we've got a lot to talk about this Giant team. So that's coming up later this week. And also coming up later this week, we're going to have the crossover show with Locked On Seahawks host Corbin Smith. So that's going to be for Thursday's show. And then we'll just keep on rocking and rolling throughout the week, as we always do here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So make sure you keep it here all week long. All right, gut check time for the New York Giants. What are some of the things that they really should think about changing up? I gave you 2 in the last segment. I'm going to give you a couple more here. The one thing that head coach Brian Daboll likes to always say when we ask him about player personnel deployment is, we have a plan for every player. And that plan, ladies and gentlemen, can consist of number of reps, types of reps, situations, all kinds of things. Okay, cool. You should have a plan. But what happens when somebody shows that maybe they could be more of a help, whereas the plan you have in place isn't quite working? How flexible are you to changing your plan and adjusting it? Now, for those who haven't figured it out by now, I'm talking about Jalen Hyatt. All right. In the San Francisco game, Jalen Hyatt managed to get open on his limited pass routes. I think he didn't have any targets, if I'm not mistaken. But yet he was able to get open. There was one play in particular that I remember seeing Daniel Jones just totally missing him, and the kid was wide open. And was that because Jones was under duress? Was it because, Hyatt was a decoy on that play? I don't know what the point is, or what the answer is there. But what I do know is if you have playmakers, why not get them more involved? I mean, the rest of the receivers that were targeted weren't quite getting the job done. So why not go to a plan B? Now, Dable, also said that, we only had something like 40 some odd plays. Okay, I get that. So you make them count. What's that saying about insanity and doing the same thing over and over again? So if, for example, running Paris Campbell out of the backfield isn't working, maybe you go to a different route. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at here with this point is be a little bit more flexible in your plan, because things don't happen the way you draw them up. Things don't always happen the way you anticipate they will. There have been many games where I've heard a coach or a player say they did a few things that maybe we weren't expecting. So why not catch the opponent by surprise? And, for what it's worth, against the 49ers, they did kind of catch the 49ers by surprise, but not in a good way, because after the game, members of the 49ers defense were surprised that the Giants didn't run Daniel Jones more often. So again, I don't know how flexible they are with the game plan, but I think they need to be a little bit more flexible in terms of adjusting on the fly, because things don't always go according to plan. And to that end, folks, the question has come up, is Brian Dable calling the plays? And I've spoken about this before. I'll say it again for those of you who might have missed it. I do think Brian Dable is more actively involved with maybe play selection, not to the point where he is calling the plays, where it's his voice showing up in Daniel Jones's helmet. But as is Brian Dable's job and his right as head coach, I do think he is in Mike Kafka's headset, and they're discussing things about maybe deploying certain personnel packages as opposed to maybe what Kafka might have been thinking. So maybe they're having, I don't know, these discussions in between series or something like that. I don't know exactly how it's working, but I just don't think there's enough time for Dable to call a play up to Kafka, for Kafka to get it down to Daniel, and Daniel to get it into the huddle. I don't think it works quite like that. But the point being, folks, flexibility in the plan, just you can have expectations, yes, but sometimes you've got to adjust, and the good teams learn to adjust. And I'm just not so sure that this team, as we have seen it, has adjusted as well as it could. All right. One other thing that I want to point out, and this, I don't know if this is going to happen or not, but some of the personnel selection and deployment, I just don't understand. All right. So, for example, why have Kayvon Thibodeau drop back into coverage? Why not blitz Isaiah Simmons a little bit more if that's his strength? Why aren't you taking advantage of Paris Campbell's speed to open things up deep down the field? These are all things I just don't understand. And it goes back, I guess, to what I said before about pigeonholing guys into certain roles. Plans are made to be broken. Ideally, you want to have a structure, but you have to be able to pivot, right? I can go into a locker room with a plan to talk to player A, and then suddenly player B says something more interesting, and then boom, the story I was going to write on player A takes a back seat for the story on player B. That's just the way life goes. And it goes like that also in a football game. So, not to take away from the 49ers, because they are a very, very good team. But I just felt like, we could talk about the tackling. We could talk about the offensive line pressure that was allowed. We could talk about all these things that the players did wrong. But for me, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to, I don't know if the coaching was as up to snuff as it could have been. And I'm sure, if you ask Brian Dable that, he will be the first to admit that they can all do their jobs better. He could coach better. Everybody could coach better. But, let's see it. Let's see it. Don't just, say it just to appease or to deflect, the real reason behind something. Talk is cheap. Play the game. And I'm not talking about playing the word game to deceive people or try and throw them off the scent. To me, the coaching thus far, I don't think I've given the coaching an A grade in my post-game report cards once. I gave them an A lot last year. And I'd like to start getting back to giving them A's as opposed to the C's or the F's that I've been giving to them. And I do think, that's the aspect that when we talk about the struggles of this team, that is an aspect that has also got to get better and in a hurry. So, all right, folks, coming up, a few final thoughts on the topic. Giants gut check time. They got to pull this off against Seattle. Otherwise, we'll talk about that coming up next. Hey, Giant fans, snap into NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So go on, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. You got me, Patricia Traina, and a few final thoughts on this game coming up for the New York Giants. Just, random thoughts that I want to talk about. And then I want to also give you guys, because you've asked me for this, you've asked me for updates, what I know about the Giants' injured players, and I'll tell you that as well. But I want to start off with the thoughts here. The Giants have had 11 or will have had 11 days between the Frisco game and the Seattle game, right? Now they had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off this past weekend. They had I believe a corrections practice meetings. I'm sorry. They had meetings on Monday. Tuesday, they're having a walkthrough. Wednesday is a day off. Thursday, they begin their prep work. All right. So it'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sunday, obviously, is the walkthrough, and then Monday is the game. So it's a typical work week for them. Folks, it's very simple here. If the Giants come out on Monday night and they lay another stinker, we really, really have got to question this team. All right. You've had 11 days, if you're the coaching staff, to kind of figure this out. If this team comes out flat, unmotivated, sloppy, whatever you want to call it, we, as a Giants fan base, as members of the media, the team, the whole community, are in trouble. All right. With Miami and Buffalo on deck, all right, if the Giants lose to Seattle, I could see them potentially losing to Miami and Buffalo. And folks, that is not a very pretty record right there. Not at all. They cannot lose to Seattle. It's that simple. Seattle's not a pushover, mind you. So I'm not saying it's going to be a walk in the park. No game is really a walk in the park. But if they lose to Seattle after having this mini bye week to figure some of these things out, to look at things objectively, to make some hard decisions, to game plan, to do, get guys' bodies right, they are in trouble. And it's going to make for a long, long season for Giants Nation. So I would say, folks, let's hope that if the Giants, they'll tell us, oh, we had a great week of practice, fine. If they do have a great week of practice, let's hope it translates over to the game. Otherwise, we are in trouble. All right. Before I wrap up for today, ladies and gentlemen, some of you have asked me for injury updates. Now, just so you know, there is no injury report to be issued until Thursday, right? Because of the Monday night game, everything shifts forward a day. But here is what I know as of Monday night. All right. And some of it is, I know, a little ambiguous, but the Giants, again, they don't have to file any report until Thursday. And as I mentioned, Tuesday is going to be a walkthrough practice, which, guys who are banged up can literally partake in it and it won't matter. It's not like they've got to be listed on an injury report. But here's what I know. Okay. Saquon Barkley, there is hope that he is ready to go Monday night. Now, personally, I suspect they might be trying to rush it. And whenever they have rushed Saquon Barkley back from an ankle injury, not just this staff, but prior staffs, he hasn't been effective. That being said, you kind of look at when he had the ankle injury and the time frame, and it comes to roughly, pretty close to the 3 weeks that was reported. So there is if I had to put a percentage on him being in the lineup, right now I'm going to give it a 50-50 shot as opposed to, like a 10% shot of him being in there. I'm going to say he's got a 50% chance as of this recording. I'll be able to know more actually on Tuesday if he's out there at least moving around and doing stuff. All right. Andrew Thomas, who has the hamstring. I'm going to say 70% chance of Andrew Thomas playing on Monday night. All right. Just a gut feeling. I know, look, hamstrings are tricky. We are now going into the fall season where, sometimes you have cooler weather, and things can tighten up. And of course, it's going to be a night game. But Andrew Thomas, from what I understand, has been making progress with his hamstring. And there is optimism that he should be back for that game. Fingers crossed, because they could sure use him, right? All right. Ben Bredesen, still in the concussion protocol. To my knowledge, he has not cleared it. Usually the Giants send out an alert letting you know when a player is cleared the concussion protocol, and we haven't gotten one as of Monday night. Probably won't for another few days, but I would say maybe he's going to be, I'm going to give him a 60% chance of being back because it will have been a couple weeks for him. So hopefully, he'll be able to make it back. Deontay Banks with the arm injury, he was to have an MRI. I would be surprised if he misses the game. I'm going to give him a 90% chance right now of playing on Monday night. I'd really be surprised, if he misses that game. The one guy I'm really not sure on, and I have no idea what percentage to assign to him, is outside linebacker Azeez Ojulari with his hamstring. And I say that because, as sure as I am about Andrew Thomas being in the right direction, Azeez just seems to take forever to heal from these things. So I'm not feeling that he's, a 50% chance of playing, especially considering that, an outside linebacker has to do a little bit more running and show more explosiveness than maybe, an offensive lineman would. So Azeez, if I had to take a guess, I suspect he'll probably be limited in practice this week, but I'm not so sure he goes Monday night. It's a real shame because they really could use him. Now, maybe the extra time will help. I don't know, but that's the one guy, if I'm being honest with you, I really don't have a good feel for as I record this. But just based on history, I don't feel optimistic about him being back this week. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because they could use him. So that should be all the injured players, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's all the key injured players that we need to know about. So that means we have come to the end of this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Keep the faith. Don't give up. There's still time for the Giants to turn it around. But if they don't on Monday night, oh boy. I will see you tomorrow, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a good one.